if reposted.
Well, I thought it would be fun to have a little bit of a story time today. I came across
Ooh.
this fable. I don't know if it's called a fable. Anyway, the gist of it is this guy runs into an old man and said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And the guy's like, "No." He said, "You used to be my teacher." And he says, "Oh, what do you do now?" "I became a teacher because of you." Basically, this student stole a watch from his friend, and the older guy was made everyone circle up and closed their eyes, and he checked everyone, found the watch, gave it back to the person, but never ousted the guy. He's like, "Do you remember that it was me?" And the teacher said, "No, I had my eyes closed too. I just wanted to remedy the situation." All that to say is, if to correct, you must humiliate. You don't know how to teach. I think last week we were talking about the sports coaches who were nuts and get up in your face. Um, so I think you can still be crazy like that, but psychology and history has taught us that if you humiliate someone, it's going to have more of a negative effect. You're more of a teacher than I am with 3 kids. How do you think about this?
I got to be honest, I couldn't get past the fact that this teacher was blindfolded and going through students' pockets. I was like,
Yeah.
in this day and age, like if a blindfolded teacher had blindfolded kids and started rifling through everybody's pockets, that would not go well. I
Well,
get the moral.
I don't think that's the point of the story. I think the point of the story is
I get that. You know, my thought about this is that there's a gazillion ways to teach kids, right? I mean, this certainly was effective for this one student, but I mean, he could have taught that a gazillion different ways, responsibility or whatever it is. I love when teachers think outside the box, right? I think it was a cool exercise, but who knows that one kid didn't get offended by this, like, and say like, you should have outed him in front of everybody so that we would know you shouldn't steal. I don't know. I like it. It's out of the box, but I just feel like there's all sorts of different ways to teach, and none of them are bad. They're just, they all have a perspective.
right. Yeah, I mean, there are different ways to learn lessons because
Yeah.
the pessimistic or whatever side of me is like, well, maybe the lesson is if you steal and you get caught, there's no
Yeah.
consequences. So
Yep.
there's a different
Exactly.
lesson to learn. Maybe you need to bring out the switch and beat him over the face. Like there's different ways to teach it. But yeah, I like that's a good way to summarize it, is thinking outside the box and not, I guess maybe don't be quick to anger when you're trying to teach a lesson, and like spiteful.
And vengeful, like you want to teach them a lesson the hard way. No, I like that. Like, don't be quick to make judgments. The other one about this is, I've started kind of ish reaching out to old teachers because no offense, my third grade teacher is going to die soon. So I've kind of like this idea of reaching out to people that have taught you. You've never wanted to do that?
No, I have wanted to do that, but third grade was a specific grade to keep in touch with.
Well,
Have you
they
kept
always
in
say,
touch with all your teachers? Like, how do you know
I,
that?
no, I haven't. I say I want to. My mom sort of knows some of those people kind of back in the day. And I've been
Oh.
like, hey, will you find Mrs. Stevens' email for me? And she'll be like, Larry, Mrs. Stevens is dead. I'm like, dang it.
So
Dang
you
it.
want to
So
do this, but you haven't reached out to any of them yet?
no, I do. I want to start being like, hey, but yeah, I'm a little slow. I got some stuff on my plate. It's like,
Oh, so if I ask you again tomorrow if you've reached out to any of these teachers, you'll say yes. I reached
well,
out
but
to
like,
all
how
of
do
them.
you find Mrs. Stevens from Ocean View Elementary School? Like, you Google her, and you'll get I mean, it's kind of random, right? From someone from 40 years ago.
I mean, maybe. I think I don't think it's very hard to find people nowadays, but I guess everybody gets their own way. Yeah, it's thinking back on different teachers I had. Um, I don't know who maybe the most influential one was. Maybe I wasn't a good student. Maybe I didn't accept things well. Like, how do you learn? What makes you learn?
Well, the thing that I like about this story is that the teachers that I loved the most were the ones that thought differently. They weren't actually teaching me to memorize something. They were actually teaching me to learn something.
Yeah,
And
teaching
they
you to
didn't really care that I had the facts right or wrong, that I memorized the textbook, but they were teaching me how to learn. And I think that's what this story is about. Like, he's teaching the kids, like, okay, there's a way to do things, and the way is not to humiliate people, and we can someone made a mistake and we can help them learn from that mistake.
Yeah, I mean, we started this with everyone learns differently. I think the hardest lesson I ever learned, I would argue maybe humiliated. It was my first job in the first like year or two of it. And part of construction is you have to do a closeout documents. You have to put this binder together that basically says, here's all the information on the building we built for you in case you need anything. Here it is. And we had this what's the conflicting, I can't think of the word, confrontational relationship with the client, and they didn't want to pay. And basically they're like, oh, this isn't to the letter of the contract, so we won't accept that, you won't get final payment. It took me a year to get that thing closed out, and that was a very public, like, I did it wrong. For the rest of my career in construction, I never messed up a closeout document again. And that was the most I learned from like failing publicly. I think for me, failing publicly is the best way to learn. I would think you and I learn differently, but that's the hardest lesson I've ever learned.
And we kind of mentioned that in the story, right? Who knows in that story, if he doesn't publicly out someone learns from, hey, if you do something wrong, you're going to get shamed in public, and they would never do it again, right?
Right. And then like the college admissions scandal, like if Lori Loughlin wouldn't have gone to jail, would we think anything differently of that? That's a whole different other discussion. But I mean, that guy, I can't remember his name right now. That guy kept doing it. He did it. I was talking to one of my friends. She is 40, and she was saying she's from Sacramento, and she remembers that guy coming to her high school, and like one of her friends got into Stanford because of him. So that went on for 20 years. He didn't learn his lesson until he got slapped in the face with the switch.
Capital C creepy. I watched that guy. I watched the documentary on him on Netflix, and I mean, like these mega successful, ultra rich billionaire people, like they had to have known that this dude was doing slimy things. Like it's not like they're like, well, he's like, your kid's gonna be on the crew team. My son doesn't even know what a boat. Like, you have to know that, hey, you're doing something, you're crossing the line here to get your kid into Stanford.
Yeah, Rick Singer, who is not in jail. He struck a deal by giving up everyone's names, and it's interesting.
Yeah, yes, and the worst part is he is capital C creepy, and he goes scot-free, and everybody else is in jail. Lori Loughlin.
And that means a lot coming from the park lurker.
Like, seriously. Hey.
Well, if you stole my watch, please give it back. You can reach out to me at Reposted Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I'm Andrew Keller for the Coxswain, saying thanks for stopping by.